In the brutal desert of 1880 to New Mexico, one choice can mean life or death. Caleb Holt was a loner, haunted by a past he couldn't outrun until a stranger's cry dragged him into a fight he never wanted. Will he risk everything for people he doesn't know? The sun bleeds red across the Pecos River Valley, painting the cliffs in hues of fire. Caleb Holt, 32 and weathered beyond his years, rides alone, his leather duster flapping in the dry wind. His horse, Juniper, steps carefully over cracked earth, her hooves kicking up puffs of dust. Caleb's eyes, shadowed under his worn hat, scan the horizon. He's a man carved by loss. His brother's death years ago still claws at him, a wound that won't heal. His revolver hangs heavy at his hip, a reminder of the life he's chosen, solitary, untethered, always moving. A sharp cry cuts through the desert's hum, faint but piercing, like a blade through silence. Caleb reins in Juniper, his pulse quickening. It's not the wail of a coyote or the screech of a hawk. It's human, raw with pain. He tilts his head, listening. The cry comes again, weaker, from the canyon ahead where jagged rocks rise like broken bones. Trouble, he mutters, his voice rough as the sand beneath his boots. He nudges Juniper forward, cautious but drawn to the sound. At the edge of a dry riverbed, he sees them, a Comanche woman slumped against a boulder, her dark hair tangled with dust and blood. She's young, no more than 28, her face fierce despite the pain etching her features. A bullet wound stains her deerskin dress, the blood seeping through her arm. Two children cling to her, a girl, about 10, with eyes that burn with defiance, and a boy, barely 6, trembling but clutching a small, chipped knife in his tiny fist. Their clothes are torn, their faces streaked with dirt and tears, yet there's a quiet strength in how they huddle close to their mother. Caleb dismounts, his boots crunching on the parched ground. He keeps his distance, one hand hovering near his revolver. The desert has taught him trust is a luxury he can't afford. Easy now, he says, his voice low, steady, like he's calming a spooked horse. What happened to you? The woman, Najoni, lifts her gaze, her dark eyes sharp despite the haze of pain. She doesn't answer, only tightens her grip on her children. The girl, Sina, glares at him, her small frame rigid with suspicion. The boy, Keel, watches with wide eyes, his knife still raised, though it shakes in his hand. Who did this? Caleb tries again, softening his tone. Silence. Najoni's lips pressed tight, her breathing shallow. He glances at the horizon, where the last light clings to the cliffs. The hairs on his neck prickle. Something's out there, watching. He pulls a faded bandana from his saddlebag and kneels closer, holding it out. Your arm's bleeding bad. Let me help. Najoni studies him, her gaze cutting through him like a blade. Then, with a faint nod, she relents. As Caleb wraps the bandana around her wound, his fingers brush hers, calloused, warm, steady despite her pain. A fleeting spark passes, not quite trust, but something alive in the desert's dead heat. He ties the knot tight, ignoring the ache in his own chest. Memories stir, his brother, laughing by a campfire, then lifeless in a dusty street, blood pooling as Caleb stood frozen. Too late. He pushes the thought down, focusing on the task. Kel's small voice breaks the quiet. They're coming, he whispers, his eyes fixed on the canyon's edge. Caleb follows his gaze. A faint dust cloud rises in the distance, kicked up by hooves too many to fast for traders or ranchers. His stomach twists. Outlaws, maybe, or bounty hunters. Helping these three could mean a fight, one he's not sure he can win. He looks at Sina, her jaw set like she's ready to fight the world, and Keel, his tiny knife glinting in the fading light. Their faces stir that old ache, the brother he failed, the family he lost. Najoni struggles to sit up, her voice hoarse, but firm. Go, Cowboy, save yourself. Her words are a challenge, but her eyes, locked on her children, plead for their safety. Caleb hesitates, the dust cloud growing closer. Hoofbeats echo now, a low rumble carrying the promise of violence. He could ride away. The stars burn cold above the Pecos River Valley, their light barely touching the desert's shadowed depths. Caleb Holt urges Juniper through a winding canyon trail. Najoni's warmth pressed against his back, her breath uneven from her wound. Sina and Keel cling to their mother, their small bodies tense in the saddle. The hoof beats of their pursuers have faded into the night, but Caleb's instincts scream that safety is a lie. The desert doesn't offer second chances. He spots a faint outline against a cliff, a crumbling adobe hut, its walls scarred by time, half swallowed by sand. "We stop here," he says, his voice a low growl, barely carrying over the wind's restless moan. He dismounts, boots crunching on brittle earth, and lifts Keel down first. The boy's small hand grips Caleb's, his chipped knife now tucked into his belt, a flicker of courage in his trembling frame. Sina slides off next, her dark eyes scanning the shadows, her jaw set like she's ready to fight the night itself. Najoni stumbles as she steps down, her wounded arm stiff under Caleb's bandana, but she catches herself, waving off his outstretched hand. Her silence is a fortress, and Caleb feels its weight. Trust is a currency neither can afford. Inside the hut, the air is thick with dust and the faint musk of decayed wood. Broken pottery litters the floor, and a tattered curtain sways in a draft. Caleb kneels by a splintered table, striking a match to kindle a small fire in a shallow pit. The flames leap, casting jagged shadows that dance across the cracked walls like restless spirits. Najoni settles against the far wall, pulling Sina and Keel close. Her deerskin dress is stained with blood and dirt, but her posture is unyielding. A mother shielding her cubs, her eyes, sharp as flint, track Caleb's every move, weighing him friend or threat. "Why help us, Cowboy?" Najoni's voice cuts through the fire's crackle, hoarse but steady, her Comanche accent soft yet deliberate. Caleb pauses, the matches glow, carving lines into his weathered face. "Didn't have a choice," he says, but the words taste hollow. He could have ridden away, left them to the desert's mercy. Instead, Kel's wide eyes stir memories of his brother laughing by a campfire. Then still in a dusty street, blood pooling as Caleb stood frozen, too late to save him. He shakes off the ghost, meeting Najoni's gaze. "Who's after you?" he asks, keeping his tone even. Though his pulse betrays him, Najoni's lips press tight, her fingers tightening around her children. Sina shifts, whispering to her, "Mother" in Comanche, the words quick and urgent, like a river over stones. Caleb catches a name, Rufus Cain. It lands like a stone in his gut. Cain's a legend carved in blood, a man who burned a town for gold and left widows weeping in the ashes. Caleb's hand drifts to his revolver, his thumb brushing the worn grip. "Cain's men shot you?" he asks, sharper now, the firelight flickering in his eyes. Najoni's silence is louder than words, her gaze dropping to the flames as if they hold answers she can't give. Kel's small voice breaks the tension, trembling but clear. "They want Mama's map." Najoni's head snaps toward him, her eyes flashing with warning. "Hush, Keel," she says, her hand cupping his cheek, soft but firm. The boy shrinks, his shoulders hunching, but the word lingers. "Map." Caleb leans forward, the fire casting his shadow long and lean. "What map's worth a bullet?" he asks, his voice low, edged with frustration. Najoni hesitates, then draws a folded leather pouch from her dress, its edges smoothed by years of touch. She clutches it like a talisman, her fingers tracing its worn surface. "It's not gold," she says, her tone heavy with secrets. "It's more than that." The fire pops, sending sparks into the dark. Caleb's patience frays. He's risking his life for strangers who guard their truths like gold. "If I'm gonna die for you, I need to know why," he says, his words clipped but not cruel. Najoni's eyes meet his, and for a moment, the wall between them cracks. "It's all I have left," she says, her voice barely above a whisper, raw with a pain Caleb recognizes. He wants to press, but Keel edges closer, holding out a piece of jerky from Caleb's saddlebag. "For you," the boy says, his eyes bright with a hope that cuts through the gloom. Caleb takes it, his rough fingers brushing Kel's small ones, and a faint smile tugs at his lips. "Thanks, kid," he says, ruffling the boy's hair, the gesture softening the ache in his chest. Najoni watches. Her dawn spills soft light across the Pecos River Valley, its pink and gold hues softening the desert's harsh edges. Caleb Holt urges Juniper along a twisting canyon trail. his shoulder aching where a bullet grazed him in a past fight he's tried to forget. Najoni rides behind him, her wounded arm pressed against his back, her warmth a steady anchor in the cool morning air. Sina and Keel cling to their mother, their small faces drawn with exhaustion, but lit with a quiet defiance. The hoofprints circling the adobe hut where they hid last night burn in Caleb's mind, a reminder that Rufus Kane's men are hunting them, their spurs jangling in his nightmares. "We need to hit the trading post by noon," Caleb says, his voice rough, slicing through the dawn's hush. "It's got walls, supplies our best shot." Najoni nods, her breath warm against his shoulder, but her silence carries a weight heavier than the sun rising behind them. The leather pouch at her chest, hiding the map to the heart of the earth, feels like a loaded gun, dangerous, coveted, and tied to secrets she's only half shared. Caleb's frustration simmers, but Kel's small hand, gripping the saddle horn, and Sina's fierce gaze keep his temper tethered. They remind him of his brother lost to outlaws years ago. His blood staining Caleb's memory. The trail widens into a sandy clearing, hemmed by low rocks and studded with cacti, their spines glinting like tiny knives in the dawn light. Caleb slows Juniper, his instinct screaming. The air feels wrong to still, like the desert's holding its breath before a storm. A faint dust cloud swirls on a distant ridge, barely visible but enough to make his gut twist. "Stay sharp," he mutters, his hand drifting to his revolver, its grip worn smooth by years of use. Najoni's grip on his waist tightens, her knife already drawn, its blade catching the first rays of sun. Sina whispers to Keel in Comanche, her voice low and urgent, as if the canyon itself is listening. A bullet cracks the silence, spitting sand at Juniper's hooves, followed by a second that sparks off a nearby rock. Caleb yanks the reins, veering toward a cluster of boulders as a volley of shots echoes through the canyon, sharp and relentless. "Get down," he shouts, leaping from the saddle and pulling Keel with him. Najoni and Sina drop to the ground, scrambling behind the largest rock, its surface pitted like an old warrior's skin. 5 riders thunder into the clearing, their bandanas pulled low, rifles gleaming with menace. Their leader, a lean man with eyes cold as a snake's, raises a hand. "Give us the woman and the map, Cowboy," he snarls, "and you might see. Tomorrow." Caleb's revolver flashes, his first shot grazing the leader's shoulder, the second dropping an outlaw with a grunt. "Not a chance," he growls, firing again as bullets kick up dust around them, stinging his eyes. Najoni moves, like a shadow, her knife slicing through the air, catching an outlaw's arm as he lunges with a Bowie knife. Her wounded arm trembles, blood seeping through Caleb's bandana, but her strikes are lethal. Driven by a mother's fire, Sina shields Keel, her small hands pushing him deeper into the boulder's shadow. "Stay low, little brother," she hisses, her voice steady despite the gunfire, her eyes blazing with a courage that mirrors her mother's. The fight is a whirlwind of chaos. Caleb ducks and fires, his bullets finding their marks. One outlaw crumples, clutching his chest, another falls with a scream, but a stray shot grazes his shoulder, the same spot already wounded, and pain lances through him, hot and sharp. He stumbles, his vision blurring, but Najoni's shout pulls him back. "Caleb," she cries, her voice raw with worry. The first time she said his name, it's a spark in the dark, igniting his resolve. He spins, firing at the last outlaw, who collapses into the sand with a groan. The leader, blood dripping from his shoulder, curses and retreats, his horse vanishing into the canyon's maze. The clearing falls silent, save for the wind's low moan and Juniper's nervous snort. Caleb slumps against the boulder, clutching his shoulder, blood slick under his fingers, his breath ragged. Najoni kneels beside him, her eyes wide with concern, her hands tearing a strip from her deerskin dress to bind his wound. "You're a damn fool," she says, her voice soft but trembling, her fingers quick and steady despite her own injury. Their hands brush as she ties the knot, warm and lingering, and the air shifts, charged with something unspoken trust. "Or maybe more. You didn't have to fight for us," she murmurs, her gaze holding his, her Comanche accent wrapping the words in quiet strength. Caleb's breath catches, the pain fading under her touch. "Yeah, I did." he says, his voice rough but honest, a confession he didn't plan. Her eyes soften, and for a moment, the desert's weight lifts, the world narrowing to just them. Keel creeps closer, his small hand offering Caleb a sip from his canteen, his wide eyes bright with worry. You're brave, he says, his voice small but earnest. Sina nods, her defiance easing into something like trust, a rare crack in her guarded heart. Najoni pulls the leather pouch from her dress, her fingers trembling as she unfolds the map. Its charcoal lines and blood-red symbols seem to pulse. In the dawn light, you deserve the truth, she says, her voice low, heavy with resolve. The heart of the earth that's a sacred spring, hidden deep in these canyons. My husband died protecting it from Cain. It's not gold, it's life. For my people, the last of our band. Her words carry grief and duty, and Caleb sees it in her eyes, a woman carrying a legacy alone. Cain thinks it's a treasure, she continues, her voice hardening. He'll burn it dry to prove he owns it. Caleb leans closer, his hand brushing the map's edge, his voice gentle. Why you, Najoni? Why carry this alone? Her jaw tightens, her eyes distant, as if seeing a past she can't outrun. Because I'm all that's left, she says, her voice cracking. My husband swore an oath, and now it's mine. The weight of her words settles in Caleb's chest, stirring memories of his own failures as brother. Lost to outlaws, a debt he'll never repay. He wants to say more, but the tenderness in her gaze stops him, a fragile bridge between them. The sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the clearing. Fresh hoofprints scar the sand, a jagged warning that Cain's men are regrouping. Caleb stands, wincing, his revolver still warm in his hand. We need to move, he says, helping Najoni to her feet. Her hand lingers in his, a quiet promise, and Sina takes Kel's hand, their trust in Caleb now unshakable. The canyon stretches ahead, its walls guiding them toward the spring and toward whatever Cain has planned. Najoni's map feels heavier than ever, its secrets pulling them into the heart of the fight. The midday sun scorches the Pecos River Valley, turning the desert into a furnace of red sand and trembling air. Caleb Holt limps along a twisting canyon trail, his shoulder and arm stinging from the ambush's wounds, blood seeping through Najoni's makeshift bandage. Najoni walks beside him, leading Juniper, her wounded arm steadier now, her knife tucked close in her deerskin dress. Sina and Keel follow, their small steps quick but weary, their faces dusted with grit yet lit with a stubborn resolve. The canyon walls rise steep, their petroglyphs etched spirals and faded warriors watching like ancient sentinels, as if guarding secrets older than the desert itself. Caleb wipes sweat from his brow, his voice rough. If your map's right, the spring's close, he says, glancing at Najoni. The leather pouch at her chest, holding the map to the heart of the earth, feels heavier with every step, a promise of salvation or a lure to disaster. Najoni nods, her dark eyes shadowed with something unspoken, her silence a wall Caleb can't yet breach. The ambush lingers in his mind, Cain's men, their cold-eyed leader, the promise of more blood. He knows they're still out there, their hoofprints haunting the sand. We can't stop, he adds, his gaze flicking to the cliffs above, where dust could betray riders at any moment. The trail narrows, forcing them to dismount. Caleb ties Juniper to a gnarled mesquite tree, its branches twisting like skeletal fingers against the sky. He kneels by a dry stream, its cracked bed whispering of forgotten waters, and splashes his canteen's last drops onto his face, washing away dust and blood. Najoni kneels beside him, her fingers tracing a petroglyph, a deer, its lines worn smooth by time. This is Comanche land, she says, her voice soft but weighted with memory. My people walked these canyons long before men like Cain came. My husband swore to keep it safe. Her words carry a quiet reverence, but her eyes betray grief, sharp and raw. Caleb's frustration flares, tempered by the ache in her voice. You've told me half the story, Najoni, he says, his tone low, not unkind. If we're walking into a fight, I need it all. She stands, her deerskin dress catching the sunlight, and pulls the map from her pouch. Its faded lines, drawn in charcoal and blood, seem to pulse in her hands, the heart of the earth, She says, her voice steady but heavy, a spring, hidden in these canyons, sacred to my people. It's not gold, it's life. The last refuge for my band. Nearly gone now. Cain wants it, thinks it's a treasure he can claim. He'll dry it up to prove his power. Her words hit Caleb like a desert gust, raw and unyielding. He sees the weight she carries, grief for her husband, duty to her people, fear for her children. Why you? He asks, his voice softer, searching. Najoni's fingers tighten on the map, her gaze distant, as if seeing a past she can't escape. Because I'm the last who knows its place, she says, her voice cracking. My husband died for it, ambushed by Cain's men. I swore to protect it for Tsina, for Keel, for what's left of us. Her vulnerability pierces Caleb, stirring memories of his brother's blood in the dust, a failure he'll never outrun. He steps closer, his hand brushing hers, the touch warm, electric, like a spark in the desert's heat. You're not carrying it alone anymore, he says, the words slipping out, raw and true. Najoni's eyes meet his, and the air shifts, charged with something deeper than trust, a promise. Fragile but growing, her breath catches her hand, lingering near his, and for a moment, the canyon's walls fade, leaving only them. Kel's small voice breaks the silence, timid but hopeful. Is the spring pretty, Mama? He asks, his wide eyes fixed on her. Najoni smiles, a rare softness breaking through. Like a star fallen to earth, she says, ruffling his hair. Tsina points to a ridge above, her voice sharp, Mama. Look, dust swirls, a faint cloud betraying movement. Caleb's hand flies to his revolver, his heart pounding. Cain's men, he mutters, scanning the cliffs. The canyon's too tight for a stand, too exposed to hide. We move now. He hoists Keel onto his shoulders, the boy's arms wrapping tight around his neck, a trust that steadies Caleb's resolve. Najoni takes Tsina's hand, her knife gleaming, and they scramble up a rocky slope, the petroglyphs guiding them deeper into the canyon's heart. As they climb, Najoni's voice drops to a whisper, urgent and raw. Caleb, there's more, she says, her eyes flicking to her children. The spring, it's not just a place. It's tied to a gunshot cracks, cutting her off. The bullet sparking off a rock inches from her head. Caleb shoves Keel behind a boulder, his revolver flashing as he fires. Two outlaws appear on the ridge, their rifles spitting fire. Caleb's shots are precise, dropping one man, his body tumbling into the canyon below. Najoni lunges, her knife, slicing an outlaw's arm as he swings a rifle but toward her. Her wounded arm shakes, but her strikes are deadly, a mother's fury unleashed. Caleb takes a hit to the arm, blood blooming fresh through his sleeve, but he grits his teeth, firing again, dropping the second outlaw. The air clears, the remaining riders retreating into the canyon's shadows, their curses echoing. Caleb slumps, his breath ragged, pain searing through him. Najoni crawls to him, her hands trembling as she tears another strip from her dress to bind his arm. You're a fool, she says, her voice breaking, but her touch is gentle, her fingers lingering on his skin. Their faces are close, her breath warm, her eyes betraying a fear not for herself, but for him. I can't lose you too, she whispers, a confession that slips out, raw and unguarded. Caleb grips her hand, his voice rough. You won't. Their eyes lock, the world narrowing to this moment, the promise between them solidifying like the desert's ancient stone. They reach the spring at last, a shimmering pool hidden in a grotto, its waters sparkling like liquid starlight. The petroglyphs here are vivid, telling stories of survival and hope. Najoni kneels by the water, her fingers trailing its surface, her voice soft. This is why, she says, this spring kept my people alive when the world turned against us. Cain would destroy it for greed. Caleb kneels beside her, his hand on her shoulder, a silent vow to stand with her. But the desert's silence shatters a low rumble of hooves, Cain's men closing in again. Najoni's eyes flash with fear, not for herself, but for her children. She turns to Caleb, her voice urgent. There's something else you need to know, she says, her hand gripping his, her words trembling with weight. The spring, it's tied to. Another gunshot cuts her off, the bullet splashing into the spring's edge. Caleb pulls her down, his revolver ready. as Kane's men emerge from the canyon's shadows, their leader's cold eyes fixed on them, promising a reckoning. The desert dawn bathes the Pecos River Valley in golden light, the red cliffs ablaze as if lit from within. Caleb Holt crouches by the sacred spring, its waters sparkling like molten silver, a lifeline in the heart of the grotto. His revolver is gripped tight, his shoulder and arm throbbing from fresh wounds, blood staining Najoni's makeshift bandages. Najoni kneels beside him, her knife gleaming, her wounded arm steady despite the pain etched in her face. Sina and Keel huddle behind a pitted boulder, their small hands clasped, their eyes wide but fierce with a courage born of survival. The petroglyphs, ancient carvings of warriors and deer, seem to pulse on the rocks, as if the land itself braces for the reckoning. Rufus Kane and his men are closing in, and the heart of the earth, the Comanche spring, hangs in the balance. Caleb's breath is steady, his eyes scanning the canyon's mouth where shadows shift like predators. Stay low, he whispers, his voice rough but calm, an anchor in the rising storm. Najoni's gaze meets his, her dark eyes burning with resolve, a mother's fire tempered by something softer, trust, perhaps, or more. We end this here, she says, her voice low, a vow to protect her children and her people's legacy. Keel peeks from behind the boulder, his chipped knife clutched tight, his small voice trembling but brave. You'll keep us safe, right, Caleb? Sina pulls him back, her young face fierce, but her eyes flicker with hope. Caleb's heart twists, Kel's words echoing his lost brothers gone years ago, blood pooling in a dusty street. I will, kid, he says, ruffling Kel's hair, a promise carved into his bones. Hooves thunder, shattering the dawn's hush. 6 riders burst into the grotto, their bandanas down, faces hardened by greed and bloodlust. Rufus Kane, tall and lean, strides forward, his cold eyes glinting like a rattler's, his rifle slung low. The map woman, he snarls, his voice cutting through the air. Give it up, or I carve it from you. Najoni stands, her deerskin dress catching the sunrise, her knife flashing like a shard of light. You'll touch nothing, she says, her voice steel, unyielding. Caleb rises beside her, his revolver trained on Kane, his stance unwavering despite the pain searing his wounds. Walk away, Kane, he says, his tone deadly quiet, or you don't walk. The fight ignites like a spark in dry sage. Bullets crack, sparking off rocks, the air thick with dust and the acrid sting of gunpowder. Caleb fires, his shots precise, dropping one outlaw with a grunt, then another as he dives behind a boulder. Najoni moves like a shadow, her knife slicing an outlaw's arm as he swings a rifle butt, her wounded arm trembling, but her strikes fueled by a mother's fury. Sina shields Keel, her small hands pushing him deeper into the boulder's shadow, her voice sharp. Stay down, little brother, she hisses, her defiance a mirror of Najoni's. Even as a bullet grazes the rock, sending chips flying, Caleb takes a hit to the leg, blood blooming through his pants, and he stumbles, pain lancing through him like fire. Najoni's shout, Caleb, cuts through the chaos, her voice raw with fear, pulling him back from the edge. He fires again, dropping another outlaw, his vision blurring but his aim true. Kane lunges, his rifle swinging, knocking Najoni's knife from her hand and pinning her against the spring's edge, his hand clamping her throat. Last chance, he growls, his eyes gleaming with triumph. Caleb surges forward, tackling Kane into the shallow water, their fists flying, blood mixing with the spring's silver. The petroglyphs watch like ancient judges, the desert holding its breath. Najoni scrambles for her knife, her fingers closing around its hilt. For my husband, she whispers, her voice a blade of its own, driving the knife into Kane's side. He staggers, his rifle clattering, and Caleb's final shot sends him crumpling into the dust, his cold eyes dimming, lifeless at last. The remaining outlaws flee, their horses vanishing into the canyon's shadows, their curses swallowed by the wind. The grotto falls silent, save for the spring's gentle ripple and Juniper's nervous snort. Caleb slumps, his leg and shoulder screaming, his breath ragged. Najoni kneels beside him, her hands trembling as she checks his wounds, tearing fresh strips from her dress to bind his leg. "You're a damn fool," she says, her voice breaking, but her touch is gentle, her fingers lingering on his skin, warm and steady. Their faces are close, her breath soft on his cheek, her eyes betraying a fear not for herself, but for him. "I can't lose you too," she whispers, a confession that spills out, raw and unguarded. Caleb grips her hand, his voice rough but sure. "You won't." Their eyes lock, the world narrowing to this moment, their bonds sealed in blood, and trust. Sina and Keel rush to them, Kel's small arms wrapping around Caleb's neck, tears streaking his dusty face. "You kept us safe," he says, his voice trembling with relief. Sina's defiance softens, her young eyes bright with gratitude. Najoni pulls the leather pouch from her dress, her fingers shaking as she unfolds the map one last time. "There's something you need to know," she says, her voice raw, urgent, her eyes flicking to her children. "My husband, he was your brother, Caleb, adopted by my people after you thought him lost. Sina and Keel, they're your family." The words hit Caleb like a thunderbolt, his breath catching as he looks at the children. Kel's wide eyes, Sina's stubborn jaw suddenly. They're his brothers, alive in ways he never dared. "Hope," he pulls them close, his heart cracking open, tears burning as he holds the family he thought gone forever. "I didn't know," he whispers, his voice breaking, the weight of his guilt lifting like dust in the wind. Najoni's hand finds his, their fingers entwining. A vow beyond words, a future together, forged in this sacred place. The sun climbs higher, bathing the spring in golden light, its waters shimmering like hope itself. Caleb stands, leaning on Najoni, their hands still joined. "We'll protect this spring," he says, his voice steady, a new purpose anchoring him. Najoni nods, her eyes bright with possibility, her touch a promise of home. Sina takes Kel's hand, her young face softened by trust, and the desert, once a merciless foe, now feels like kin, its waters whispering of healing and renewal. In the 1880s, Comanche women like Najoni were vital to their communities, often serving as keepers of sacred knowledge and sites like springs, which sustained life in the brutal West. The Pecos River Valley, a crossroads of cultures, was home to resilient, native bands who fought to preserve their heritage against encroachment. These springs were more than water, they were symbols of survival, hope, and identity.